Nwanuforo from Asset Intelligence, and thank you for joining us for this market update. I'm joined today by Ritu Vohora, investment specialist at T. Rowe Price, an investment firm we work with closely. Ritu, I'd like to look at some of the asset classes in greater depth, if that's okay.
Sure.
I'd like to start with your position on Japan. There's been a lot of change going on there in recent years. What's a T. Rowe Price view there?
Yeah, we still like Japan. I think as a market, it's performed very well in 2024. But when we think about some of the longer term structural changes, particularly around corporate governance, we think that's going to be a long-term driver for the creation of capital for shareholders. But also from an earnings standpoint, we think earnings will continue to improve in Japan. And when I look across our portfolios, areas like healthcare is where we're finding some really innovative companies within Japan.
And how about here at home in the UK?
The UK is a tough market, right? I think we've had a Brexit discount for a number of years now. So it is very cheap. And I think, at an individual company level, there are probably some opportunities, but I think structurally, there's probably better value in other markets where we can see more immediate catalysts for growth.
And how about across the channel? Certainly there's been a lot of commentary that Germany in particular is going through a tough time at the moment. What's the view there?
Yeah, so Europe's a tough one. It's an area we've wanted to get excited about, but it's very difficult when you look at the macro backdrop. On the one hand, we do have the ECB cutting rates, but as you mentioned, growth is particularly sluggish in countries like Germany. And I think the US election has impacted a lot of that sentiment because companies have just not been investing, business has not been sort of raising capital because of this uncertainty. And I think if we do get these universal tariffs, it could have implications for growth, particularly in open markets like Germany. And again, they don't have the same amount of radical innovation that we see in the US. I would say, though, there are individual companies, ASML, for example, is a company we really like, but you have to be quite selective.
And finally, China's been on a bit of a roller coaster ride recently. The growth miracle of recent years has certainly slowed down. But in the past few months, we have seen a bit of a stock market rally. What's going on in China?
Growth has been woefully weak, right, coming out of COVID. And there's really been a confidence crisis. The consumer's not just going out spending. And I think, the issue with China is they're going through this multi-year deleveraging process, right? It was very dependent on the property market. They're now trying to make it less focused on that and much more around domestic consumption. But these things take time. And so what the government doesn't want to do is throw a lot of stimulus at the markets and get that credit bubble up again. So what they're doing is they're incrementally providing some stimulus. And to your point, we started to see a steady stream probably in the middle of the year, which has helped improve sentiment. But again, we haven't seen the fiscal bazooka that maybe markets have wanted, and that's kind of dampened the mood. So China's probably one for the contrarian, but from a long-term view, I think, it's a very cheap market, but you have to be very selective.
And while investors are waiting for China to pick up, are there any other areas which are benefiting from China's slowdown?
Absolutely. And I think when you look at sort of Trump's tariffs on China in his first term, we saw a lot of Chinese companies rechanging their supply chains. So we started seeing Chinese companies with Chinese people being set up in Vietnam, but also other countries have benefited from these supply chains changing. So when I think about some of the frontier markets like Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines, I think these could be beneficiaries of any tariffs we see coming onto China and countries like Mexico. So yeah, I think there is opportunity, but again, emerging markets are very, very diverse, and different economies will have different drivers, but there's certainly going to be some winners.
We hope you've enjoyed watching. If you have got any questions about anything you've heard today, get in touch with the team at Asset Intelligence and we'll be happy to provide you with further information.